Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sugar-Free Show with myself, Karen Thomson, and nutritionist Emily Maguire. Today, we have my favorite sugar-free celeb and sugar-free crush, not in a perverted, but in a nice way, Damon Gameau with us, and I am so excited. Because Damon has literally changed my life and changed my kids' lives as well, which is a massive, massive undertaking. And I think that if you have kids, you'll understand just how hard it is to convince them of the dangers of sugar. So I'm going to step out of this conversation and let Emily take over.
Thank you, Karen. So, Damon, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
For being on with us. Just to give you a bit of background as well, so the 1st of September obviously is today, and as of today we had, I think it was, what was it, Karen, 7,500 people signed up so
Amazing.
far to take on the sugar-free challenge. So everyone is completely geared up. Karen and I are just bowled over by how many people have actually come on board. So everyone is very excited very much about your interview. So do you mind just taking us through, I mean, pretty much we've had so many people contact us about your film, and it's obviously gone global. I have seen you, I was in Australia and heard obviously your name around there, and then when I got to the States, obviously, and you've just finished kind of a tour of the States from there. So do you mind just taking us through kind of what the film was about, kind of in your words, and what kind of, the whole Black Sugar film kind of involves?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on, and look, it is great that it's influenced your children, Karen. That is, I've actually, one of the best pieces of feedback I ever received was a 10-year-old in a cinema in Australia, and he said, look, I've been dragged here by my mum. I thought your film was going to be shit, but it's actually really cool. So I asked him if I could put that on the poster, but I thought that would be a great line for the poster. But look, for me, it really started. Probably really started about 7 years ago. I was I was a late 20s, early 30s male who, I have to confess, was drinking about 2 cans of vanilla Coke a day and smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And thankfully, as often happens with a man, I met a really good woman just in the nick of time before I self-destructed. And
she is gorgeous.
She is gorgeous. Yes, she radiates health and well-being. And I guess, as many men will relate to, in a bid to impress her and woo her, I pretended to be interested in healthy eating for the first probably 3 weeks of a relationship, and so really pretended to enjoy her cucumber and kale smoothies and her organic avocado chia seed bread or whatever it was she was feeding me, and lo and behold, I just slowly started lowering my refined sugar intake, and I just felt completely different. And it was a bit of a mind blow for me because I had never understood the power of food and how it can affect the way you look and feel and think and even perceive the world, really. So that was a big changing moment in my life, and I really didn't think much of it. And then about 3 years later, I started to notice there was a lot of press starting to emerge in Australia about sugar, and look, the camps, as you know, were very divided. Some people were using words like toxic and poisonous, and other people were saying that it was essential for energy. So, we had a baby on the way. Things had obviously progressed very well with the relationship, and I thought, well, look, the only way to actually find out the truth and cut through some of these mixed messages would be to do an experiment on my own body and kind of eat some sugar and see what it does. And the fact that I hadn't had any sugar for quite a while meant that I had a very good template. My liver was in excellent health. My body in general was in a good shape. So the doctors were very keen to see what effects sugar would have very, very quickly. So that's really how it started, and I thought I would eat what the average Australian is eating, which is sadly about 40 teaspoons of sugar a day. Yeah. But the catch was that I was walking down a supermarket and I picked up a can of tomato soup, and I saw that it had 8 teaspoons of sugar in it, and I thought, I don't reckon many people would be aware that there's that much sugar in this perceived sort of savoury meal. And that's really how it started. I spent the next 2 hours kind of like some kind of shopping nerd, just looking at different labels and calculating all the sugar in these products, and was just completely blown away by where sugar was found. So I just sort of thought, I wonder if I could do this experiment and not have any junk food, no soft drink or chocolate or ice cream or confectionery. So I think that's why the film has resonated like it has, because I'm eating all these foods that are perceived as healthy, and quite often parents will give their kids thinking they're doing the right thing. There's often a flower or a sunset or a lovely farm or, you know, something very picturesque on the front cover that, you know, implies that it's from nature and it's healthy, and yet people aren't really turning that label around and seeing how much sugar's in it. So that's how it started, really, and I guess it was very low budget at the beginning, and it's really just snowballed from there, and it's been completely overwhelming to see how far the film has travelled now. We've just become the highest grossing documentary of all time in Australia, so people are really ready for the message. And you know, that's because there's just so many people like yourselves out there that are very passionate about this message. They have been trying to tell their loved ones about it, but getting nothing but brick wall and resentment. Finally, they get to kind of strap their teenagers into the lounge room and say, we're going to watch this bloody film. And that's kind of what's happened, and I think it's just been I guess it's capitalised on the work of so many good people, and we just tried to make it accessible and fun and present it in a way that was engaging to families, and I think that's why it's done so well.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it was super engaging. I was really kind of blown away by it when, you know, I got to see it in Denver when you were there premiering it over there, and I think one of the really key takeaway points, because I know a lot of people, when they kind of heard about the film, they were like, oh, it's just someone going to be eating some sugar and we know exactly what's going to happen. But I think the real key point was that you actually, you know, 40 teaspoons sounds like a lot of sugar, and that's a lot to add to your tea or coffee. And I think what really was kind of quite a good message for me to see as well is that actually it was all these products. So it was these perceived healthy products, you know, etc., the low fat type of thing. So how did you come around? Because you obviously had some, you know, really kind of key experts and things within the film, and I think, you know, David Gillespie was obviously one of the major sort of experts that had guiding you sort of through there and things. So how did you come to sort of find these kind of experts, and I mean, what was their take on it as well when you decided to say you were going to put yourself on this experiment? I mean, they must have just thought you were a little bit crazy.
Well, look, the way it worked out really was that because I was so naive to nutrition, I mean, I really had no interest in it at all, that I didn't know whether we'd get any results or not. So that's why we made the experiment 60 days. And really, we started without any kind of research, no money. I mean, Zoe did a lot of the filming at home. I had friends coming up and doing the filming because we didn't know whether we'd have a film or not. I thought there was a red hot chance that really, you know, I might put on half a kilo and you know, get a few different, maybe a zit or two, but would there really be any effect? But the fact that after sort of 18 days I developed the signs of fatty liver disease, that became the really big turning point of the film. So when that happened, that's when I started sort of kind of feverishly reading anything I get my hands on and reading studies and trying to work out who were the key people out there that we needed to speak to. And again, the minute I approached them and said, look, we really want to get this to kids and families and make it fun and accessible, we really didn't get anyone saying no. And I think a lot of them that we'd spoken to, you know, especially people like Barry Popkin, Kimber Stanhope, these are people that have kind of flown under the radar and really done some incredible research for 25 years without getting any recognition. In fact, getting the opposite, getting, you know, the pushback from industry saying that they're crazy and whack jobs for doing this kind of research. So I guess for them, it's validation that finally all their research, which has been done with such integrity and honesty, is starting to see the light. And so look, they've been so supportive. Even now that the film's out there, you know, they're thrilled that it's getting the coverage it is. And, you know, they're the ones. I mean, I just came and amplified a message that they've been spruiking for a long time. But those guys are the pioneers. They're the ones on the front line that have just, when it wasn't a trendy topic, when it wasn't cool on Facebook to lower your sugar intake, they were the ones out there on the front line. So, you know, they need to be acknowledged, those kind of people. And I was really grateful that we were able to get them in the film because they're the heroes in all this.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some truly amazing people within that film. As you say, they're complete pioneers. with it, and we owe a lot of thanks to a lot of them within there. So at any point when you got told about, that you'd developed fatty liver, kind of sort of not even halfway through sort of the experiment, did you want to kind of stop at that point? Were you sort of urged at all to kind of give up, or?
Well, look, I think what did happen is that the people that were monitoring me, the doctor and also Ken Sakara, who was the clinical pathologist, we just kind of made sure that everything sort of, the stakes got raised. So we just made sure that I had a blood test every week instead of every 2 weeks, just to make sure that I wasn't doing anything too stupid. And it's funny because in a kind of sort of twisted way, I was kind of glad in a way that the results were heading the way they were, because it kind of meant that we had more of a film in a really odd way. But I know that doesn't make sense, but it's just that, the fact that all these symptoms I was developing are the symptoms we're seeing more and more prevalent. I mean, the fatty liver disease now affects 1 billion people worldwide, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This didn't exist 35 years ago. The fact that I had type 2 diabetes on the way, this is something that kills someone every 6 seconds worldwide now, and it's preventable from disease and from food. So I guess that was kind of great that these things were happening to me, because I was like, wow, all this speculation that I'd read about, all these studies that had been done that I, weren't conclusive, they were happening to my body. So I guess that sort of meant that we had a bigger story on our hands. So I didn't mind taking a hit for the team, so to speak.
And just kind of speaking sort of that, we obviously have so many people kind of on board with us now for the Sugar-Free September Challenge. How did you find the kind of, obviously you added the sugar in and then taking it back out again? Sort of, how did you find that kind of process?
Adding it back in again or taking it out?
Well, both. So how were you kind of in, and then afterwards, because obviously you didn't see the kind of withdrawal kind of sites again within there.
Well, I mean, it's funny, adding it in, I was kind of, again, quite naive. I was a little bit excited about, I hadn't really had a lot of refined sugar for a while, so I kind of thought, it might be nice to kind of suck back the odd kind of sugary treat, but I got a rude shock because I guess as many people will attest to, once you step away from refined sugar for a while, when you go back to it, your tolerance isn't what it used to be. And so I really got kind of floored in the first 4 or 5 days. And, mainly my moods, my sleep patterns, just my general well-being got completely knocked for six. So I kind of thought, I've got a long way to go here. I'm 6 days in. I've got 60 days to go. This is going to be very tricky. So, but again, my body just kind of adjusted to that, which we discussed in the film, that it's incredible how you do adapt to your environment. And I think when we talk about that most people have had sugar every day of their lives since they were children. So that's the reality they know. They actually have never experienced what it can be like to step away from this substance that does activate the reward centers in your brain, that does play havoc with your appetite controls and make you feel foggy in your brain. So people think this is all a bit weird and nuts, and they don't get it until they've tried it. And I guess that's the real hope and message that we try and get people to understand in the film, is just to give it a go. Like, just try it, because you've probably never been without it for 2 or 3 days, but you will start to notice the changes. And in fact, there was a fantastic study only done 2 weeks ago, and it's pretty much the first of its kind, where they looked at the effects of people that removed sugar after a 2-week period, and they found that 53% of people noticed their cravings were still around after 3 days, but after 6 days, 86% of people said their cravings had disappeared. They felt much better and lighter, and they'd never go back to sugar again. So, that's what people need to hold on to. It looks like about 6 days, maybe a bit more for some people, a bit less. But if you can get through to that point, you're going to start to notice the benefits, and your body's going to start to readjust to a different way of fueling itself. It's like running a car. If you run your car on that kind of fuel your whole life, if you suddenly throw in a different fuel, it's going to cough and splutter for a while. But once it actually stabilizes, then you're going to have a much more efficient machine on your hands. So I guess for me it was a bit easier because I had a reference point. I'd done it before, so I was very excited to get back off the sugar and get back to these real beautiful whole foods that nature gives us, because I knew how it made me feel, how my vitality, looks, everything changed once I eat those foods. But most people don't have that. So I empathize with them. It can be scary, it can be a bit daunting. And I think people need to realize that it does release the same opioids that love does in your brain. So it's very comforting for people. It's, that's why we have a tub of ice cream after a breakup, or we're watching a sad movie, we'll demolish a Kit Kat, because it makes us feel good, and it's like a companion. So the thought of actually letting that go and breaking up, so to speak, with love can be quite confronting for people, and we just urge people to go gently on themselves, be kind to themselves, understand that it's not just a physical craving, there are emotional aspects to it, and to just be kind, not be too severe. Fruit can be your friend. Half a banana in a smoothie is great. Some blueberries are always good with a bit of cream on it. There are ways to get through to kind of make it easier for yourself.
And I think that is such an amazing message of what we're trying to say to people. And I think that over the years, the downplay of the impact that sugar actually has, on the body, in that, people say, oh, sugar is just another calorie, it actually has less than fat, so it's, technically a lot better for you. But we're now seeing, all the impact that this has physiologically and biochemically in the body, which is, it's crazy. So before we move on, the other question I just wanted to ask you is, in the film, you obviously take a day where you just literally eat the sugar. You add certain amounts of teaspoons, and then you eat the sugar cubes. I mean, what was that? I was sitting with a couple of doctors in the audience watching that, and we literally couldn't even look at the screen when you were biting into the sugar cube. So did you actually kind of do that for a full day? You kind of just eat
that was right up there with one of the toughest days of the shoot. And I actually I did throw up at the end of that day. And initially we had that in the film, but we already had another vomit, so I thought this can't be a 2-vomit film. I think we've got to choose our vomit. So we decided to go with the last one. But yeah, I was a very sick man at the end of that day. And look, that was interesting because we did a rough cut early on of that, and a couple of people just couldn't get their heads around it. They said, that's too extreme. Like, why would you do that? No one does that. And I had to say, well, that is exactly what people are doing. They're just not aware that they're doing it because it's hidden with so many other things. But you would never do that on its own. And so I think that scene's been quite impactful, especially for kids. Kids love that scene because they find it hysterical that I'm eating real sugar, but it drives it home the point to them. And that's the best feedback we're getting is how kids are harassing their parents now and saying, hey Dad, do you know how much sugar's in that? And I'm sure there's lots of parents hating me around the world, but I'll take that hit for the team.
Yeah, and I think that is the thing with it. We've had so many people commenting to us saying, oh, well, I don't really have that much sugar, and they think that sugar is just this added thing to tea, coffee, on top of your cereal, etc. But the thing is, there's just so much sugar everywhere. So another scene from the film, which I think you probably had a lot of feedback on, is, and I forget his name, but the boy who was in Kentucky with the really bad dental...
Larry, yeah.
Larry, yes, with the really, really kind of bad sort of teeth. So do you, can you just explain exactly sort of what was going on with him? And then I know a few people are still kind of wondering what sort of happened after the film type of thing. But that is a really big problem. So do you just want to take us through what that was and then the situation around it?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, obviously we just sort of, when you're making a documentary, you kind of look for different stories, and it was very important to me to see what impact sugar was having directly. I could see what it was happening to my own body, but then I wanted to see how it was affecting society in different ways. And a friend of mine told me about this particular story that he'd read about with these kids in Kentucky that have got a condition called Mountain Dew mouth. And as you know in the film, this is because, look, in the late 90s, there was a big cola war in America between Pepsi and Coke. And Pepsi kind of won out in Kentucky, in the state of Kentucky. And as a result, they've just kind of got all their products in there. And this drink, particular Mountain Dew, was probably, I guess, one of the first real energy drinks before energy drinks existed. It's got 40% more caffeine in it than Coke, and even more sugar in it than Coca-Cola. So it's a real kind of, I mean, it's a hell of a drink. Great for cleaning rust off bumper bars. And but sadly, these kids, and adults are just having so much of this stuff. And we spend a day with this dentist who's, again, one of those saintly people that needs to be glorified for what they do. He's converted an RV truck that he drives around with his son, and they literally treat these kids in these lower socioeconomic areas for free. And he does about 5 to 6 kids a day to replace their teeth. And their ages are from 4 to 16, 17. So the boy we meet, Larry... Oh, yeah, and that's the thing. It's Larry, who we meet in the film, who's 16. He's one of the oldest patients that he deals with because the mothers there are putting it in their babies' bottles. And look, we see the same in Australia with our Indigenous, our Aboriginal culture. Some of the mothers there are putting Coca-Cola in the bottles. But what was interesting is that I showed that segment to a group of dentists at a conference last year, and they said to me, look, don't think that only happens in those kind of areas. We see that in the cities with parents that give their kids juices thinking they're doing the right thing. They're putting these blackcurrant juices or these apple juices in their babies' bottles. And there's just a way that the fructose attacks the teeth. It blends with the glucose, and the way it sort of attacks the enamel of the teeth in a very kind of unique way. That's what people need to get through, is that it's not just the internal damage, it's what this stuff is doing to our teeth. And you need to understand, if it's doing that to the teeth, what the hell is it doing on the inside of the body? So, again, that became a really sort of powerful part of the film. We debated as to whether to show some of that stuff, but in the end, we went, you know what, people need to see this. This is real. It's not sensationalist. This guy is treating these kids 5 or 6 times a day with this exact condition. We need this stuff to stop, because it's an absolute tragedy that kids have to go through this experience. So the good news is that I stay in touch with Larry now. He's a great kid. In fact, I spoke to him 2 days ago, and he said, it's so weird. People are coming up to me and saying, are you the guy from That Sugar film? So he's over the moon. He's even said, you know, should I come to Australia and meet some people? So I thought it could be quite hilarious to do an Australian tour with Larry, and we just have this moment where he just opens his teeth on stage and all the lights go off and there's fireworks and people are chanting for Larry and his new pearlers. But he's the best news is he's not drinking Mountain Dew anymore. He's got this lovely porcelain all-American smile now, and he's in great form. So it's a good story there in the end, because he's a lovely kid. But look, there are so many children that are going through that pain even today as we speak, probably. So this is where we need some help. This is where we need the government to step in. It's not just about education. We need some regulation here. Otherwise, this stuff's just going to continue, and it's just ridiculous.
And that was just kind of going to bring me on to my next question with it. What do you think it is going to take to change, you know, all this? What is it going to take for people to kind of listen? It's probably a very, very big question, and, you know, I'll take a lot of things. But from your experience and what you've done, and you have a really unique, you know, outlook on it. So from what you've seen, what do you think your take is on that?
Well, I think what people need to understand is that it's going to be up to us as the people. We are the ones that have to ignite the change, and that's what's been great about the film and social media. People like you, the fact you've got all these people signing up to do this thing, is that it has to start at a grassroots level. The government aren't going to act first because there are too many conflicting interests. There's too much money at stake. I mean, this is a $50 billion industry, and you want to hear an example of how powerful the sugar lobby is. There's an amazing story about when Bill Clinton was in the Oval Office with Monica Lewinsky, basically doing the breakup chat after everything had gone down. She had to testify everything that happened in that hour, and the phone rings halfway through their breakup chat, and it's a guy named Alfonso Fanjul, who's one of the head sugar barons in Florida. He had direct access to Bill Clinton in the White House and rang him because Al Gore the day before had speculated there might be a sugar tax. And he rang him to say, that's not going to happen, is it, Bill? And Bill said, absolutely not. So this is how powerful sugar is as an industry. This is what we're up against. So for us to wait for any kind of action from the top down is just going to take forever. We have to try and ignite this change. That's why we've got our study guides in schools, get principals, parents, teachers on board. And if we can create enough of a groundswell, which is happening, and yell loudly enough, then the politicians will listen to us. If there's votes in it for us, for them, then they'll listen. But I think what we need eventually is for them to actually step in and regulate the industry and sort of say, not let them get away with this kind of lack of integrity around marketing, how they market to kids, what they can put on their packets, these kind of health claims like, you know, essential energy or full of vitamins. I mean, they're so misleading for the public and for parents. In fact, there was a study here done in Australia that said that 55% of people get their dietary advice from a packet compared to 25% from a health advocate. So what is written on that packet is so vital to understanding. So if there's not integrity on it, and it's very misleading around sugar, then is it any wonder that we're in the mess that we're in? So that's where we need government help. There is talk in a few countries at the moment about a tax. Look, it's a tricky one. The only way I would support the tax, and other people, again, there's been a study done here, is if there's a very clearly marked independent group that looks after that money so it doesn't disappear into government coffers, and they say, you know what, we're going to take that money from soda or sugary drinks, whatever it is, and we're going to subsidise it for fresh fruits and vegetables in schools, in hospitals, in lower socioeconomic areas, then we can clearly see it being effective. Whether the government's going to agree to that, I don't know. But again, look, I'm confident it'll look different in 5 to 10 years. This stuff is moving so fast. There's so much science coming out about it. There's so many people doing TV shows about it. There's people like yourself banging the drum. It's just kind of growing. And the best thing is that people are experiencing a difference. Once they lower their sugar intake, they're saying, I mean, they come up to me saying, you've changed my life, you've changed the life of my family, that it's very real. So they then share that knowledge with their friends and their family, and that's how it's spreading. And look, that's heartening. Again, we're just seeing how powerful human beings can be when they get passionate about something. And I certainly think this particular topic is causing and creating a great groundswell.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the grassroots movement, and even obviously in Karen, you can attest to this in South Africa. I mean, it's crazy how much it's taken off there, and and that's been a lot of the people, because they've been doing it, with people like Karen and Professor Noakes that have been there. So I think
that's
that
right.
Things like this are all going to bring it sort of together, with it. So just sort of, I know we're probably going to wrap up quite soon with it, and I think, Karen, are you looking to ask a question there? Is that why you were?
Yes.
You put your hand up.
Put your hands up.
Otherwise, we all talk over each other, and it just doesn't work. I'd like to know have you received much backlash, and how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you have put yourself as a prime target for people to say there's no scientific evidence. Exactly the same thing as Professor Noakes and I are facing in South Africa constantly. So I just want to feel like I'm in the same boat as somebody.
Yeah. Well, I think what's been fantastic for us is that there is now a group out of the University of California called Sugar Science, and they've now reviewed 8,000 papers that link sugar and disease. So anyone that kind of tries to poo-poo this message, there's no leg to stand on anymore. There is irrefutable science around this topic now. That probably wasn't the case 5 or 6 years ago, but thankfully, because it's such a hot topic in terms of world politics, and it's on the publicity sphere everywhere, that there is more and more science being done. We've kind of copped quite a lot of flack from people that think we're affecting industry, like that we're affecting jobs, which is quite frustrating because, again, we're putting industry ahead of human health. But I think we actually have got a lot less than I thought we would. And I think because our message is we're not out to demonize it, we're just trying to say to people, be more aware of where it's hiding. So that if you want to some people can have a treat every now and again. They're not as sensitive as other people. So that's fantastic. If you want to have a bit of chocolate at the end of the day, terrific. But just understand that at the moment it might be your 35th or your 40th teaspoon of the day. If it was just your 5th or 6th teaspoon, hey, you're going to be fine. But people have no idea how much sugar they're actually having. So if we can at least start by getting down to that number and then see what happens from there, I think that's a great starting point. So I think that's kind of protected us in a way. Although I did notice things change quite dramatically in America. We did it was a bit of a game changer. There was a lot more food politics that went on there. And even I did some quite big sort of media and TV shows there, and I did sort of get pulled aside before I went on and sort of got a bit of chat about what I was and what I wasn't allowed to say, which was really interesting in terms of a different system of operating there. And you just need to understand again that these food companies are enormous, and they have stakes in these TV shows. They are involved in the media. They put huge advertising dollars to keep these kind of shows alive. So I think people just need to understand how interwoven the whole system is, and again, that's why it's just up to us. We've got the power. We can choose to not eat those foods, and then they will, because of capitalism, they'll have to survive and they will have to adapt to suit our needs.
And I completely agree with it. And one of the greatest resources that I have found is your book, that sugar book. I mean, I love the way you've put everything out. I love the graphs. I love all the information. It's simple. In my opinion, it is the best book written on sugar ever, because it is accessible for every single person who reads it.
That was the point, is that we, this stuff, again, even making the film, I didn't want it just to be accessible to a very kind of small audience that might go and watch, a documentary or read a book about sugar that was overly scientific. It was like, those people, that's great. That's a very small group. How do we get this to a very broad audience? How do you write a book so that parents can show their kids how sugar affects their body and make it fun and playful so that they really understand it? So that was always the intention, and it's just terrific that it's actually been received the way it has, because that stuff can fail spectacularly sometimes.
yeah, it can have a bit of a negative. Just a quick question as well. We get a lot of people sort of kind of asking on this. So, you and your family, how do you guys eat now? What is it like after the whole thing's finished? And you have your daughter now as well. So how do you incorporate sort of
Yeah.
the sugar-free living for all of you?
Well, I guess for us it's quite simple because it's very obvious. I mean, we're first-time parents. Our daughter's only 22 months, but she just wants to mimic us. She wants to do what we do. So the fact that we don't eat sugar, she doesn't even think about it. She loves having blueberries. That's her thing. Or half a banana, she absolutely loves. So I think people need to understand that you are setting an example for your child. They are looking up to you. And this kind of stuff is much easier to do when you change as an entire family. It's no good just the mother doing it and trying to convince the husband and beat them around the head, or just the kids nagging the parents. This is something the whole household needs to embrace and move together. And you will notice the benefits. You will notice behavior changes. You will notice vitality. It's just everyone is saying that's gone through it. So it's a no-brainer in a lot of ways. And I think that eventually things will look very different. At the moment, obviously, we haven't hit the kids' party circuit. There's no kind of sugar dealers out there kind of influencing our daughter. But, we don't want to demonize it. We don't want to sort of make it out as this kind of evil substance she can never have. We'll give her some dark chocolate at some point. But I'm kind of hopeful and confident that by the time she hits the school circuit, maybe in 5 or 10 years, that it will look very different because of this kind of message being spread so rapidly, that one mum who doesn't want her kid to have sugar at the school is not alone anymore, because there's 5 or 6 parents that now have seen the film or heard this stuff from what you guys are doing, and suddenly they've got support and there's more understanding, and then we won't offer them the cupcakes as much as we did maybe in the past. So I'm very confident that will happen. We've got a great metaphor, a reference in terms of tobacco. We were having these chats 40 years ago about tobacco, and look how far we've come. And we had doctors recommending cigarettes in the 50s, and we've made this incredible leap forward. And I'm confident that the same will happen with food, and we'll look back at this time and go, wow, that was really the starting point. But because of social media, the message can spread so much faster, so we'll get it done in half the time.
Yeah, and that is truly what is amazing kind of with it. So I think we're coming up to time, unless Corin has any particular other questions that you want to ask Corin? Any other?
I just want to ask Damon, where can people find you if they're looking for you? Where can they find your book, your film? Where can we find more information and find out more about your next projects? What do you have in sight for the future?
Well, it's kind of I sort of promised Zoe that it's been such a circus, and so we've got so many things that have carried on because of the film. Like I said before, we've got a school study guide that we've launched here in Australia, and we're about to launch it in the UK and America. There's a UK parliamentary screening next week. We've had hospitals screening the film, and prisons and community groups, and it's just been such a wonderful response that I guess I've still probably got a fair bit to do with this film for the rest of the year. We do have another book coming out very soon, which is pretty much a collation of all the things I was asked. I've done 85 Q&As, so it's kind of a real conglomerate of all the things that people wanted to know. It's kind of laid out very simply, and Zoe's done 80 recipes for the book that really were the recipes that she made me coming off the sugar again. So again, it's just designed to be very helpful for families. So, I mean, that's kind of in terms of film things. I've got a few ideas, but I'm just not going to rush into them. If people are interested, we've got a Facebook page, That Sugar Film, which I sort of operate. So if people do have questions, I can usually get back to them quite quickly. Instagram, Twitter, those kind of things, and also thatsugarfilm.com, which has a lot of free recipes. There's a free ebook for people just to get them started and understand and get their heads around all this stuff. And there's lots of information and blogs and references to other people that can help.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing you saying is that behind every great man, there's a really phenomenal woman. So a huge shout out to Zoe and your beautiful daughter for making this happen, because it's actually because of them, right?
There is no doubt about that. That is an unequivocal statement. Yeah.
Awesome. So guys, if you want to check out Damon and find out more about what he's doing, head on over to thatsugarfilm.com. Follow him on Instagram, Twitter. He's all over the show. He is amazing. He's one of our sugar-free superheroes, without a doubt. Damon, do you have your top tips for the people who are starting Sugar-Free September today and maybe experiencing some withdrawals or some difficulty saying goodbye to sugar?
Yeah, good question. So what really worked for me is to understand there's been a lot of science and research done about how sugar activates reward centers in our brain. And we know now that also fats, like healthy fats, can also activate similar reward centers, just slightly less than sugar. So we really recommend things like a bit of coconut milk or coconut husk or an avocado. Those kind of healthy fats are very good to just kind of alleviate the craving, take the edge off. Also, a great smoothie, something like a bit of coconut milk, a bit of avocado, and half a banana, and blend it together. You get that beautiful sweetness with all the fibre of the natural sugar as well. And if that doesn't work for you, I heard a great tip from a nutritionist in America who said use reverse psychology. So have something really disgusting if you're having a craving, like apple cider vinegar. So your brain sort of says, right, well, I'm not going to have a craving if you give me that shit. I'm not going to touch that foul stuff. So go for that option as well if all else fails.
Oh, amazing. That is an amazing way to end this off.
Well, thanks for your time, guys, and congratulations.
Well, thank you so much for being on with us, Damon.
Yeah, thank you
Pleasure.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Damon.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
Good on you. We'll keep flying the flag in South Africa.
Okay, guys, we're off.
Well done.
Thank you so much for being on, Damon.
How do we get it into How do we get it into schools here in South Africa?
Yeah. Okay. So.